Welcome, Hari. Thanks for giving me your time. As part of this particular forum, what we are trying to kind of touch base on all these critical questions, which might be basic, which might be a little complex, but the objective is being that can we discuss these questions out so that people get a little more comfortable or get adapt or possibly can we can define a sort of a learning curve in terms of how can they gradually move from a node A to a node B in a sequential way, right? So that's the idea for this particular forum. Uh, Hari, it would be great if you could share a bit more about what you've been doing and more, what is the problem which you're solving at this point in time?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me, Gaurav. I think in my last 7 years of entrepreneur journey, this is the first time I'm recording a session with fellow entrepreneur who comes with a
Oh,
similar background. Because in India, typically similar industry to entrepreneurs don't come and share anything and don't share anything online. That's not the culture. But I'm glad that we are having this session today. So quick intro. I come from recruitment background. Did tech recruiting for about 12 years. Was a hardcore
Hmm.
sourcer for about 7, 8 years, and 3, 4 years did a people management kind of a thing. Moved from sourcer to recruiter and recruiting leader kind of a thing. Work with companies like Oracle, IBM, UHG, Amazon, and all this stuff. Last 7.5 years, still trying to figure out what to build for recruiters because whatever we built, there is not much of adoption. There's a lot of resistance from the community, but
Hmm. Hmm.
absolutely loving this journey from recruiter to building a products for recruiters, getting their insights when they use the product, getting their feedback, working with them, building with them. It's a totally a different journey. But yes, 12 years recruitment, 8 years building recruiting tech products summarizes my journey so far.
Awesome. So we'll start from there, right? So we talked about that there's a lot of hesitance in the community while talking about certain ideas and, while possibly cross-sharing platforms, right? And you also
Yeah.
talked about that in this interesting journey of what we have built, how you steered the concept of experiential based open houses and then moving on to a vector based stack ranking ATS with Sparam, right? And now you're solving for outreach, right? So I've been kind of following your work, but you also talked about it. There is always a bit of a resistance and a kind of a pushback from an adoption perspective from the community itself. Why do you think that is? Because if I just try and kind of increase my radius of of the similar scope, and if I move slightly away, to let's say Europe or to the US, even Sydney to an extent, right? What I see that adoption or that anecdote of sharing platform is much more open. However, what we see up here in India is that we've been conditioned in a certain way that people are not really open or they look at a certain opportunity with a critical state of.
So there are two aspects to it, right? One, initial days I used to get very irritated about it, right? Why is that people are not adopting technology and all this? But then
uh,
slowly I understood they don't need it. Their problems are different.
okay.
So if you put one TA team of one company, let's take one XYZ company has about 10-member recruitment team, sources,
Okay.
recruitment
Yeah.
and all. उनको बोलो कि
Yeah.
just write down your problems, anonymous. Okay, write down in slip and give it. Nobody will
uh,
talk about stack ranking. Nobody will talk about I need a better ATS. I need this system, that system. You will say that my hiring is unrealistic. Right? I have a toxic work culture. Right? My manager, doesn't encourage me to, do certain things like open houses or anything innovative ideas I want to do. They don't do it. Employer referral policy sucks in my company. That is why I'm trying. So they have different problems. And then you
mm.
suddenly jump and say that, hey, I'll stack rank, I'll do this, I'll do that. They are like, bloody hell, one more problem. So that is one. That
Yeah.
to understand and realize that it took for 5, 6 years for me to understand that, okay, their problem is not stack ranking. Their problem is not this. Okay, let's not sell them. Let's not push them.
Yeah.
So that is one part of it. Second part of it is in the culturally.
Mm.
Culturally we are our recruiting systems or processes or the market dynamics are different. Here we wait
Okay.
for 2 months for a candidate to join. There
Mm.
they wait for 2 weeks for the candidate to join.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
3 weeks to 3 months to 3 weeks, there's a lot of dynamics change,
Mm-hmm.
right? The way the candidate behave with us and all those stuff, right? So that is where they know that if they solve the outreach and sourcing, the rest is in place. 2 weeks part
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Here, that's not the case. Post offer, the 3 months part is a bigger thing. So here, people don't love to share the data or a platforms or an ideas or whatever it is. Their thought process is always revolving around the transactional work they are
Got it.
into.
Got it. Got it.
So
So what I hear is that possibly we see the friction is that which typically defines that talent acquisition definition for us is very different compared to the other geographies.
and then just
So
to add, right, the risk taking appetite, right? So here in India,
uh,
so I was talking to one of the company. I told that, hey, take subscription for 8,000 rupees, run campaigns. I'll assure you'll get 2 closures.
mm,
They said, if you need 2 closures, you run the campaign. I'll give you the success fee. So success fee, that level of position was about coming to 10 to 12 lakh rupees. Okay, but I was pushing for 8,000 sale.
subscription, correct? Right.
8,000 rupees sale. But
Yeah.
we ended up making 12 lakhs. That's a different story.
Yeah.
But the risk taking capacity for that 8,000 bucks is also not there.
Wow. Mm,
But then
mm,
culturally, the company, the organization has a philosophy of working with agencies. They don't care about until and some finance team something blows up big time. They are okay. Okay, well, as no questions asked by anyone. My manager, my director, no one is asking me any questions because I signed 8.33%. But
Oh yeah,
8,000 rupees,
man.
100 questions to answer, right? So that's
Yeah. Interesting. So another aspect, right? So and again, just stretching this particular perspective, what you brought in, right? So I was just reading this post what you did a few weeks back. We talked about that while all these scenarios are constant, right, at this point in time, and if they change, and possibly will they change, it's also an aspect of in terms of how the organization thinks, and more
yeah,
importantly, how you can just step up your game from being a tactical person to someone who is an advisor in real sense.
yeah,
What I look at things is that someone who basically closely work with your business stakeholders, and can you sell your business the same way possibly a CXO would do, that will be the game changer ability of you to actually transition your game, right?
yeah, yeah.
However, when we talk about tactics, right? So I look at those tactics as a 0 and 1 problem, right? So for example,
Right.
there is a defined input and there's a defined output. Now, what happens in between could be a process change of plus minus 5%, but
Yes.
there's a defined input, there's a defined output, right?
Yeah.
If the input change, the output change, so on and so
Correct.
forth. And then there was this point of yours where you talked about a very interesting, a narrative which you say that, hey, AI should solve for some things or a few things, and AI should not solve for a few things.
Correct.
Can you share a bit more about it?
See, basically, for our industry, at least in the space we are in the
Mm,
region we are in, right?
mm,
Whenever I go and talk to someone, right? So they say that we need to implement AI. My first question is define AI. So they say that we want AI to stack rank the applications. Okay. How many applications are you receiving in a per day? Some 8,000 to 10,000. No, not some. Give me the number. How many applications versus how many team members, how many rec split. Let's do a basic capacity management planning here.
right, right.
We'll talk about whether AI fits into there or doesn't fit there.
Makes
We'll
sense.
talk about it. So basically, then you look at it, right? Per day, per recruiter is churning about 60, 70 resumes in a day. You don't need AI for that,
Yep, yep. Mm,
right? So then you go to another, company. They say that hiring managers are too busy to write job description. We need AI to write a job description. ठीक है, there are many free tools for that.
fair enough.
Use leverage them. नहीं
Mm,
यार, so we need, it is every time it is writing the same JD. You want Python developer, it will write the same JD. Before that, what was your hiring manager doing? They were recycling.
mm, mm,
So basically, from our ecosystem perspective, there are two
mm,
parts of AI as an overall TA as ecosystem, and then
mm.
the ecosystem where we belong, where we are in,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Here, there is no proper definition of use cases
Mm-hmm.
where the for a XYZ, for example, this tech industry,
Hmm.
this we need AI. There is no
Okay.
generic way of defining the AI because each
Hmm.
organization has a unique problems.
Fair
They
enough.
have based on the size, based on the type of hiring they do, etc.,
Hmm.
etc. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So that is where I always say that first do the automation part. Don't go to the AI. First thing is one step at a time, right? So first get the automation. Is your
Hmm.
system in place?
Hmm.
Ways that your recruiters are today manually spending a lot of time. Okay,
Sure.
identify those areas. Don't
Sure.
try to do 100% automation. Start with
Hmm.
50, 60, 70, 80, 100. Then,
Hmm.
once your automation framework is set up, let's identify the AI use cases and slowly
Okay.
implement those
Fair
AI
enough.
use cases.
Hmm.
So, in this part, a lot of people say that, okay, offer follow up should be done by AI. Yeah, I said that's a very ridiculous way of looking at AI. That's
Hmm.
a human touch point. It's a very emotional thing. Communicating an
Yeah.
offer to the candidate,
Yep.
communicating the compensation philosophy to a candidate,
Absolutely.
human touch
Absolutely.
point. Where
First
there
one.
is no
Correct.
scope for room for an AI. If someone is doing it, let them do it. You implement it, whatever it is. I'm
Hmm.
not denying that fact that this cannot be done by AI or something like that. But
Hmm.
being in the industry for 20 years,
Hmm.
what I understand is this is a very emotional part of it. Communicating a
Got it.
selection, communicating a rejection, communicating the offer, communicating the hiring manager touch point in between, picking, hey, welcome to my team, Gaurav. I'm gonna be your reporting manager. We are solving
Yep.
these things.
Yep.
So different vibe altogether, right? So these are the
Right.
things where you don't need AI. Okay? Generally, where we require AI, there is no generic way of
Yep.
defining. Where
Yep.
we don't need AI, definitely there is a standard use cases where we don't need right now. Don't touch them.
Got it.
Don't.
Got it. Yeah. So I think what I'm taking away from this is that when we talk about AI use cases in our scope, leaders and people who are investing or building into the solutions, they should clearly demarcate two things, right? So one is what is a tactical load and a low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
Can a bit of an automation solve for it,
correct.
right? And that automation can solve for it, okay, using a certain tool, certain processes, or possibly using uh, new technologies in play. However, wherever emotional, questioned, or human touch point is required, do not try and kind of over index and over engineering thing, because those are ecosystems where conversation will be required for you to achieve a positive impact, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. So, in fact, you know what? I was reading this, not reading, but there is this guy who I follow. His name is Marcus Brownie, and you know he does a lot of these very interesting gadget reviews. Okay, a little of context, but what he talked about is a very interesting transition of how technology adoption have evolved as far as a 100 million user journey is concerned, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And he talked about that phone, you know, the landline phone took about 75 years to hit 100 million users,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If we talk about mobile phone, a mobile phone took about 15 to 16 odd years to hit 100 million users. And then he had this descending order of Netflix, Facebook, Twitter, Insta, and, you know, from Netflix till about the recent kid on the block with TikTok, the transition time of 100 million story or users was from 5 years, which was Facebook, till about TikTok, which is about 8 to 9 months. And the last kid on the block was ChatGPT, and the GPT took only 3 months to hit 100 million users. Okay. Now, with that as a reference point, while the use cases and the adaptation for different channels is different,
Yeah.
right? And while we are still discovering different use cases in terms of how can a potential AI touch base can impact different use cases as far as talent as an ecosystem is concerned, right?
Yes.
Even today, of the overall ecosystem, if I just to kind of put up a guesstimate, right? So let's just talk about LinkedIn. So LinkedIn at this point in time has a total potential public data access with them is about 950 million plus people, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Now, if I consider LinkedIn as a one big org, right? And if I divide this org into further departments, And if I just talk about HR and TA in specific, any typical matured org or a startup will have about 3 to 4% of total headcount as so-called HR headcount, right? So what I'm talking about is roughly about 30 odd million people who are tagged as so-called human resource professionals.
Correct.
And a typical HR team, about 70 to 80% spread is of TA folks, and the rest 20 to 30% spread is of VPs, compensation ops, and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
what I'm roughly talking about is about 20 odd million people or 25 odd million people who are tagged
Yeah.
as recruiters in this whole scope, right?
Hmm.
Now look at 100 million users,
Hmm.
which took about 3 months to adopt to a technology like GPT. And here is a sample size of about 25 odd million recruiters globally, which is testing different use cases just to make their life easy.
Hmm.
Correct? Any thoughts on it in terms of this relation of adoption cycle, what other people have, because content is more there, right? They possibly are accessing media through that information. They're accessing information through that information. They're automating their own jobs, could be like writing, could be editing,
Correct.
could be text to speech,
Yeah.
could be video, could be an image to video, right? So there's so many use cases which businesses have identified, right?
Right.
What are these critical use cases which you foresee, which possibly the ecosystem of ours can adopt faster?
Yeah.
Because we still have a long way to go. People are still scratching their
Absolutely.
head in terms of how can they use it. While
Absolutely.
others, whether it is sales, marketing, technology, or a consumer like you and me, right? So we have
Yeah.
taken like just dot 3 months to adopt the particular technology. We're still using it like unknowingly.
Yeah.
But if it stays concerned, it's been like what about year and a half now? We're still experimenting. We are automating searches. We are automating data analysis. We are automating process workflows. But again, nothing is very concrete. And beautifully, again, feel free to question me or pardon my limited knowledge. See, the adoption is as less as about 1%, less than 1%.
The biggest problem, Gaurav, is the trust. Okay.
Okay.
And risk taking ability also. Right. So
Mhm.
today I am working with some of the sales agents,
Yeah.
right? AI driven sales agents, and it's working for me. So I don't have much of expectations, first of all. Okay. I pay
Mm.
$9, I expect $9 kind of an outcome. Yeah, I
Mm.
don't expect $90,000 or $9 to $99 also, right? So
Mm.
first of all, what is your use case? You
Mm.
know, and what would be the potential outcome? If you have a clarity, the adoption will happen. Today, the TA leaders need a strong education around it. So don't look everything as an outcome as a service. Okay,
Yep.
you deliver, I'll pay.
Mm.
Don't look at that perspective. Look at that perspective. Keep certain percent of a budget. You fight with the leadership or whatever it is. Get some budget, take some risk, save, adopt some technologies, play around with those technologies, and align them to your use cases, and have your team aligned to those outcomes. These are the use cases. These are the tools I have explored. These are the, let's go and try. I tried this. This was the outcome. Why don't you guys try and let me know about it? Rather, calling the vendors, doing the demos, having those sessions, putting the POC for 3 months, things working out, not working out. I think the change has to the way you look at the technology is, like you mentioned, marketing, sales, content. Founders, what they're doing is they're just signing up a free trial, looking at the features. If possible, they're doing a 1 month subscription, using those cases, and then telling the R member saying that, hey, I did this and this is the outcome. I think fairly decent product. Let's adopt it. A fairly decent
Yeah.
use, something like
Mm.
that. That doesn't happen in TA ecosystem because the
Yep.
recruiters are busy with their transactions. They are running behind the candidates, hiring managers, blah blah blah, and etc. The TA leader has a different set of things. That goal setting of 3 hires to 5 hires per month, bringing the source with 30 to 15% of agency or whatever. Right. First of all, our goals has to change, right? From 2003 to 2024, same goals about source mix, recruiter productivity, implementing this system, implementing that system, and all. It needs to be changed. Somewhere,
Yep.
education has to be done at that level. Okay.
Yep.
Then you will see the adoption. Otherwise, with the current way the TA ecosystem is operating, the adoption will not increase. It will decrease
Yeah.
further.
Yeah.
No
So
matter
another,
whatever it is.
no, absolutely, totally bang on to it. And that brings me to a very interesting aspect, right? So I was talking to this very seasoned sales leader. Okay. And again, we're just discussing about how things are happening in their space and how they are using technology, right? So they talked about, and so they were talking about paper type. And now the beauty is what he talked about was that the way a sales function will think through is that, so look at it this way. So a mind has a finite possible ways of thinking through. If you put like 1%, 2%, 3%, that space to think finite way will only vary by plus minus 2%. Now the point is either I can plant more people to produce more, or I can have this one unicorn which can think, like five people, but he'll be burnt eventually, right?
Yeah, correct.
Right. So what they did was they invested into this technology which can understand what you mean and can generate series of content basically depending upon what your tonality is. You can just choose your mood, whether you wanted professional, you wanted engaging, and so on and so forth. But the beauty is that it did not really impact anyone's job out there.
Right, absolutely.
So while engine is able to create a certain output, but the input to train that model was done by these three or four people who were rock stars in their game in terms of how a content should be developed or written, right? So their brain got married with a machine learning engine on top of a generative AI, which can produce a sequence of so-called events, right?
Correct.
And a lot of these editors and writers embrace this move. And primarily, what is happening in sales spaces, a lot of these leaders are looking at this opportunity as not with a fixation, but hey, you know what? Here's an opportunity which on a click can can produce me more live engaged feed for my broadcast, because for me the key is that how can I push a more valuable content to my customers so that I can get that payment gateway hitting like more occasional, right? So that's how it started.
Yeah.
Versus if you talk about recruiting as a use case, I still see that fixation, and people are still talking about, what, will this technology take away our jobs,
Yeah.
will this technology you know
Yeah.
obsolete me, so on and so forth.
Yeah. So very defensive, right? So one point, Gaurav, right? So even I did a very shitty job when I was a TA leader, right? None of the review meetings had a 15 minutes placeholder to talk about what could we do from a systems process perspective or a process perspective, where is that we can improvise and all those stuff, right? Most of the reviews have been very transactional about bitching about hiring manager, talking about this report, talking about recruiter productivity, source mix. So until and unless we fix those things, right, we can't even talk about technology today. The way technology buying decision, we need to do another session altogether. That is a very crappy thing that people do, right? But technology identification also, suddenly you and I, like a makers, we reach out to the companies, we write our outreach, right? So param.ai, innovative ATS, vagera, vagera. And then they see that, okay, let's set up some time. Then the entire team comes in the demo and all this stuff. They have no clue about it, what it is, what not it is. And we keep selling our products.
No, they have clue, dude. They have cushions, right? So come, आज तो एक नया आया है.
Right? So the thing is, one interesting thing is about, for example, you talk about open web data, I talk about open web data. We both talk in one language. For us, there's no active passive candidate. There's a
Yeah,
candidate only. That's it. You
correct,
pitch
right.
your opportunity
Yeah,
and you convert that candidate into prospect, a prospect into
absolutely.
hire. This is what we do. So now when we go and talk to the TA leader, they say that no, we need immediate joiners. Your open web data doesn't give you the comp indicator or what indicator नहीं, we need
Yeah,
exact number चाहिए.
exact count.
Expectation
हाँ.
उसको चाहिए, तभी हम कैंडिडेट से बात करेंगे.
Hmm.
Fair enough. That is your use case. I'm not denying that part of it. So either in the technology perspective, to answer your question, right, two use cases. Automate your sourcing. Your recruiter, let the recruiter deep dive into Naukris only. Not denying that. Okay.
Hmm.
There are a lot of sourcing agents coming up, AI agents. It's a
Yeah,
public data, okay?
yeah,
And you leverage this data. and add them to your funnel. I'm not
Your
saying that
pipeline.
look at
Correct.
this as a whole funnel. I'm not
Hmm.
saying that. Okay, you need both actually. So take the funnel and automate the sourcing AI agent or whatever it is and do this funnel part. Then your recruiter do the LinkedIn funnel part. Then the outreach you typical send your job description. Let this engine do your personalized, generative AI based outreach content or something like that.
Yeah.
So do both. Do both. If this works, continue. Don't, it doesn't work, discontinue. Yeah. But for this, you pay $10 $15 per month and invest that 50 $60 and take a decision about it. Don't
Hmm.
ask people to do it for free. So those kind of conversation, if today the maker's problem in India is not about innovating or creating a world class products or whatever it is, right? People first of all look at that there's not much of innovation coming from India or whatever it is. That's not the problem. The
Yep.
only thing is don't call that as a POC or whatever it is. Try to have that use cases. First of all, in your room, in your review meeting with your recruiters and hiring managers, ask them where is that they want technology, what is that use cases they want to solve, what is that they are absolutely tired of doing, coming to office every day and doing things. Is it scheduling, is it sourcing, is coordinating or rec ops or whatever it is, right? As a TA leader, you should be able to put a goal saying that my team 40%, 50% bandwidth is going in these areas where people are not liking it.
Yeah.
They are
I
doing
agree.
it
Plus
for
one.
the sake
A
of
big
doing
plus one.
it. Now, who are the makers? Who are not 100% fitment, 50%, 40%, 30%? Let's start somewhere. When you start doing those things,
So do you think as we evolve, so one is we are talking about a mind shift, right? So where leaders start need to kind of have their orientation more in terms of, hey, should I kind of budget at least 20%, 30% scope of experimentation with new technologies? This is one
yes,
way of looking at it. The second way of looking at it is that I know a lot of these mature organizations does it, that they already have a dedicated programs headcount, which is primarily designed to kind of inculcate these new interventions into play. As a takeaway, what are going to be your recommendations? That, hey, you know what, these are few plus ones which people should think and should consider, not adopting a tool or kind of negating a tool, but just to have that mindset in terms of, hey, how can you kind of go about experimentation, and more importantly, these few things which you think they should kind of avoid or over complex, because they are happening for good and they should be there. So any call outs like that?
see, the first thing is stop talking about AI and all this stuff. Okay, so
Mm.
that is something in a very latter stage kind of a thing, right? So
Yeah,
first of
yeah.
all, I would say that I want to implement. Stop talking like I want to implement AI. I want to evaluate AI-based systems. We are evaluating AI-based ATS, or stop all those things, right? So someone has to give that feedback to the people, saying that every year or every 6 months or 9 months, go back to your process, try to audit those processes. So the problem is people who are in between. Someone else has implemented AI-based system. I want to implement it. I want to write down in my year-end review that I implemented this system, or I just want to show the feeling to someone that I'm evaluating the systems and all this stuff, right? So
Yeah,
stop
yeah.
with those things. I mean, I think ho gaya. We have been doing it. I have done it, right? So then I started making the product. Then I've been this side, that side. You are also same thing, right? You have been this side and that side, right? So now enough is enough. So now what we need to do is every other department and function is innovating.
Yeah, they
Sales,
are.
marketing, designers. My designers, they don't even come to me. They have their own use cases and they are leveraging their systems and all this stuff. They are just send me an email saying that I need this much of budget. This is what it is. The tech engineering side of it, right? They're very, very mature.
Yep,
What they need, what they don't
yep.
need. CTO, my engineering team, they don't include me. I have not attended any demo to buy a product for engineering team.
Yeah,
They subscribe and they
they
use
know
it,
it. Correct.
right? Know it. So for TA also, either if you know, you subscribe and use it, face it, and then
Yeah,
tell the team to do it. Or you go back to whiteboard and say that what are my process? Where is that it is manual? And you want to keep it manual because the recruitment, a lot of cases have the human touch points, which are manual. Don't disturb them, keep them like that. where you see a scope of automation, call the respective makers and don't call them vendors, by the way, call the makers and evaluate the technology, like it, move ahead, don't like it, don't like it. Don't call the for a POCs and all those stuff. So here, from a TA ecosystem perspective, I feel it's the adoption will not happen. So forget about adoption also, right? First of all, fix the way you assess the technology, fix the way that you buy the technology. Then adoption will by default get fixed. Then we'll talk about AI and other stuff. So, we are very, very far away from an AI perspective, specifically from talent acquisition ecosystem. We are talking about basic automation, basic way of how we make decision to buy a technology or assess a technology needs to be fixed first.
Mm. No, I agree. And I think big plus one to it. I think it's more to do with conditioning. And again, I think I've spoken to a couple of people, and the more I'm talking to people, this thing is very, very clearly visible, Hari, that it is more to do with our conditioning. It's more to do with in terms of how we have been kind of raised in this kind of ecosystem, and hence our fixation to try only a few set and not look at the world outside of our own comfort zone. Versus, like I was like talking to the gentleman, who's in the US, right? So, and I was just following this thread. In India, people could just talk about the big elephant in the town, which is the database we all know, and people could just talk of like two or more extensions, which were basically quote unquote working on recommendation, but that was a database backed recommendation working on skill match, and that's pretty much. Versus out there, people have already let go of the elephants out there and talking about the agents like Dice and Career Builder and stuff like that.
Correct.
And people could talk about Lucia, people could talk about Signal Hire, people could talk about, you know, Hunter.io, people could talk about Sales QL, people could talk about so many functionalities. And in
Gaurav,
fact, right now,
US, right? Just to sorry to interrupt you, but in the US, right, Apollo.io
yeah,
for recruiting. Zoom
exactly,
is widely used for recruiting. Show me
correct,
one recruiter in India who does that. Thing is, who is that first person will come and say that,
correct,
hey, we are going to
correct.
change our goals, we are going to change our ecosystem, we are going to change the tools the way we are sourcing. It's not only job boards. We look at open web data. We will look at outreach models. The why campaigns needs to be introduced.
Correct.
It's not just
Correct.
spamming the people. How do we look at our content? What kind of my recruiter needs a good content, because good content converts good conversation
Yeah,
converts to prospects into hire. So
true.
content plays a major role in recruitment. So why we are not evaluating tools which helps recruiters to write a beautiful content?
Correct. Absolutely. I totally agree.
I think the change will happen. The makers, so from our perspective, also we also changed. Now we are auditing the customer first. Do
That's
they
very
need,
important.
do they need it?
Correct.
We are openly telling them, saying that, hey, you know what, my product doesn't fit you right now.
Doesn't fit you. Yep. Yep.
So you need to fix these things. So there is a
Absolutely.
message going into the ecosystem. So what you're trying to do on the educating the users, I think people like you should continue to do that and be very vocal about it. Like I see Victor and other people are very vocal on LinkedIn, right? Negatively, that is a different story, right? That is up to you, right? So, but there are people like Victor, there are people like you, there you're trying to educate people some or other way that how the systems, how the process, how we used to operate, how we need to operate, and all those stuff.
Yeah.
I think this is the change which we are seeing. I think I am hopeful that things may change.
To the new. Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for your time. I think it was fun having chat up here. It was lovely interacting. Thank you. Thanks, Hari.
Yeah.
Thanks for your
Yeah.
time.
Thank you, man. Thanks.